When you think of future funk, what is the first thing that springs to mind? Could it be a particular artist that served as an introduction to you when stumbling upon this type of music? Maybe it's reflecting those golden days of the 80s and 90s that some of us never got to experience for ourselves. Who knows what it could be? We've all had a different experience on what brought us into this world full of sanguine, upbeat dynamics that continue to inoculate our senses. One thing I know that many would agree with is that we often like to visually associate the genre with a lot of those dreamy, feel-good summer vibes that we love to indulge in. Speaking of, there was one distinctive character in the early days of future funk that was known for the reoccurring tropical getaway themes and has left a significant influence on the culture. If you haven't already been acquainted with this certain individual yet, you're in luck, because you, my friend, have just earned yourself a free first-class ticket into this world we'll be exploring together. To further understand his history, experience as a producer, and the splendorous catalogue of classic albums that have since been deemed as essentials to future funk, I had the honour of talking to this person through a bunch of emails to get a glimpse at how he managed to establish his brand as one of Vaporwave's most iconic figures. Also joining us for this ride is the homie Chennington, who has offered to treat you guys to some succulent morsels of info on this journey we'll be taking. So ladies and gentlemen, strap yourselves in and thank you for choosing to fly with us today, because we're about to visit what became the utopian paradise of future funk and its golden boy, Aloe Island Posse. Before he was known by the moniker we all refer to him by, Aloe Island Posse had already been experimenting with sample chopping and numerous electronic subgenres from synthwave to trap music, and would regularly construct a myriad of beats for his friends to rap to. He also found that there had been a trend of Space Jam remixes on SoundCloud, thus resulting in his first set of material to the web under the name Hexagon. Even while trying to understand the fundamentals of how a DAW works, it didn't stop him from doing what he wanted. Aloe Island stated that his main influences included the Quad City DJs, Frank Ocean, and the Avalanches, the latter of whom left the biggest impact on what he gravitated towards in music production. While putting a lot of time and effort into this new project of his, Aloe Island always kept a very low profile with his real-life identity from surfacing on the web. Though his IRL following was nowhere near as big as his fanbase online would be, only a few close friends of his were aware of who this new future funk artist was, simply by sharing WIPs for review to gain some feedback. During his time at university, Aloe Island Posse's introduction to Vaporwave was around the time of when he began as a freshman DJ at his school's local radio station. A majority of what he played on the air were occasional selections of chillwave songs from small internet labels, which overlaps with future funk thanks to his introduction to the genre through Keats Collective. His fascination with this music eventually resulted in him spinning an array of anthems from the likes of Parrot Jungle 95, Roller Girl, Lancaster, Harrison, Topaz Gang, and Supersex 420 on a routinely basis. Considering that the scene wasn't nearly as expansive back then, and that the access to newer tracks became rather scarce, Aloe Island knew that the radio station needed more variety in order to keep going and avoid becoming tedious to the audience. With plenty of experience under his belt in music production, he took the liberty of creating his own tunes for his university. After broadcasting a handful of singles that he made, Aloe Island realised that he had enough material to release an EP. So on the 5th of December in 2014, he decided to use those songs to assemble his debut, inducting him into the world of Vaporwave. Welcome to Aloe Island. The tropical themes encapsulated in the 6-track EP later became a recurring trait in Aloe Island Posse's catalogue as a producer and in the visual aspect of his work. The reason for this attribute is because, according to him, he spends most of his childhood travelling from Canada to Hawaii when his mother was working as a flight attendant. With the amount of times Aloe Island got to fly to more tropical regions and cities as a kid thanks to the cheap airfares and discounts his mother would earn from her job, he fantasized a lot about all the possible adventures he could go on and all the sights that were to be seen. Because Vaporwave is always fixated on nostalgic undertones and that a lot of the future funk releases increasingly adapted the visual and audible trope of reminiscing those feel-good summer vibes, this was a cocktail of perfection for Aloe Island to utilize in his creative space. Since he had to spend his later years studying in a location that constantly snowed, he treated this recreational pastime of his as an escape from reality to revisit the memories of his time in Hawaii. The following year after his debut, Aloe Island started pumping out more music and reached out to the likes of ID Chief, Conscious Thoughts, and Supersex 420 where he collaborated with them on various projects of theirs. He also made a handful of appearances on compilations from the Future Society and RTAM Collective labels while releasing singles on his own SoundCloud accounts. It was that same year when a narrative had been developed by Aloe Islands that tied him with his debut, especially with what came next in his discography when he came into contact with renowned Vaporwave producer Christ, owner of the popular Vaporwave label Business Casual. After exchanging pleasantries with each other, Aloe Island shared something that would be the first of his discography to be pressed to a physical format. On February 13th, 2015, Business Casual publicised what then became one of their most acclaimed records on the label that remains a classic to future funk, as well as what many have stated to be Aloe Island Posse's greatest accomplishment. That, my friends, was Aloe Island Adventures. Aloe Island Adventures has been regarded as an essential to Vaporwave for its tropically scented vibes, meticulously crafted EQing, and nicely manipulated sampling, and I personally consider this to be his best work to date, as well as my number one most favourite future funk record of all time. Everything about it is so captivating and fitting to suit that classic 80s retro aura, texturized to the brim with beautifully arranged sample chops, transposed to emit new melodies, palatable MIDI percussion, and above all, the sunny sensation of what Aloe Island Posse treats as his bread and butter, which immediately puts the listener on its expedition of fantasy to relish with contentment. And seriously, how can one not enjoy and listen to this beauty without feeling like they're being warped into a luxurious paradise? The kind we're talking about is that iridescent resort by the crystal blue ocean, constantly massaging the sandy white beach at the front of your 5-star villa surrounded by emerald-coloured palm trees growing the ripest fruits you've ever laid your eyes on. To further explain the significant quality and attributes of Aloe Island Adventures, my good friend Pat Chennington has a few words to share on why this particular record continues to maintain a legacy that has given future funk a vivacious atmosphere that envelops you with glistening feelings of those hot summer days.
So sometimes the best way to explain the significance of a producer in the future funk scene is to kind of just take a step back and just share the story of how you found that artist and why said artist made an impact on you. I remember years ago when I was first getting into all of this vaporwave, future funk stuff, I was fresh to the scene, and at the time was just listening to everything and anything I could find. It was really fun, and this was that time when everything just felt like I was venturing through this frontier I've never knew existed. Sounds I've never heard before. It was like discovering a color that I've never seen before. And this was the same time when I would randomly just buy physicals I'd see online just because I thought they looked cool. I know at this time I preferred future funk more than traditional vaporwave. I found it more upbeat and really only heard the vaporwave classics up until this point, so the excitement and shine of future funk was just really alluring to me. Especially as someone who fell in love with French house during middle school and high school, it kind of reminded me of that and brought me back to that vibe. And one day I saw that Business Casual was dropping a BizBox set. The BizBox was like this monthly box of 3 cassettes, all with a shared theme. I don't think John does those anymore, but at the time they were a great pickup. Awesome value for what they were, 3 cassettes. I think it was like less than $20. And someone like me who was looking to start developing a little collection of physicals, it was perfect. Furthermore, this edition I stumbled on was a future funk themed BizBox. I remember it had Love Story by Desired, it had Righteous Groove by Aesthetics Please, and the last one was this little release called Aloe Island Adventures by Aloe Island Posse. Now, up until this point, I've heard Desired before, I knew who Righteous Groove was, but I never heard Aloe Island Adventures, or I just had no idea who Aloe Island Posse was. I clicked purchase, 3 Future Funk cassettes for a bargain price, how could I say no? And I ain't even a big cassette guy at this time. I actually had no cassette player at all. I still don't have a real cassette deck. I have a little mini one, which I'll get into later in this video. But I had no cassette player, so I didn't even have a way to play them. I kind of just found myself loving the art style of everything in the scene, so I'd buy the physicals, knowing one day I would have a cassette player or something, and then I would just play them then. But eventually, yeah, the cassettes came in, and they just kind of sat there. I never really did anything with them, but one day, my girlfriend ended up getting me a little portable speaker cassette player thingy for my birthday. She knew I had a bunch of cassettes at the time, and I had nothing to play them on, so it was like the perfect little gift. And that same week, we went to the beach, and I thought, you know what, why not bring the Future Funk cassettes and the cassette player instead of that, Bluetooth speaker. We had this one friend who brought like that Beats pill everywhere and just like blasted horrible music on the beach. So I was like, you know what, let's try something different. What better way to soak in the sun than having it paired with the retro grooves of Future Funk? So we get to the beach, find a good spot, that spot that's like just close enough to the water, but not too close for when that wave at like 3 p.m. comes in and just fucks your day up. And I pop in that Aloe Island Posse cassette, and let me tell you, it was a time and a half. The production of Aloe Island Posse is already super 80s radio sounding. It's definitely not polished at all, but having that ran through another like cheap cassette speaker thing with the beach surrounding you, the vibe of it all was absolutely perfect. It was so powerful for the moment. It's a musical moment I'll always remember from my memories of hearing an album for the first time. And I've never even listened to the album digitally up until that point. I just had the cassette sitting there. Everything about it was perfect for the beach. The crunchy horns, the distorted radio-like vocal chops, just so refreshing and summery. The album sounds like the smell of sunscreen. It's beautiful. Long live Aloe Island Adventures. And if you haven't heard this thing yet, well, pack your bags because your ass is about to go on a goddamn flight and a half.
2015 was quite the year for Aloe Island Posse, as a large proportion of his work was released around this time, between SoundCloud and Bandcamp. A lot of the grooves he emitted in these endeavours would still feature the linchpin to Aloe Island's sound that was the tropical-centred aura he continued to amalgamate with Future Funk. After Aloe Island Adventures, he produced 2 more records, including one additional album that was a collaboration between himself, ID Chief, and Conscious Thoughts that also got pressed on cassette by Business Casual. As far as full-lengths went, this was also the last year the internet would ever see or hear anything new from Aloe Island Posse again. On December 19th, he released what was his last full-length record that also served as the final chapter to its trilogy, Goodnight Aloe Island. In the description of the Bandcamp page for the LP, Aloe Island attached a pastebin link where he explained what was to become of his future with music production and the brand. He reassured that Goodnight Aloe Island wasn't a farewell to Future Funk, but it was just another way of him saying that he was in need of a break from the genre and experiment further with other ideas he wanted to touch base on. After presenting Goodnight Aloe Island to the scene with the announcement of his hiatus, Aloe Island continued to demo a myriad of songs, some of which ended up becoming available for the audience to download. Despite there being little interaction between him and the community, he did however contribute to a lo-fi hip-hop EP with a friend of his towards the end of 2016 dubbed Siestas, under the pseudonym Quiet Casa. It didn't receive as much attention considering that Aloe Island isn't known to be very vocal about promoting his music. While hiatus was still taking effect, a number of cassettes were pressed by the now defunct Sleepless Tapes, averaging to around 50 copies for 3 of the 4 albums that Aloe Island had conceived. Welcome to Aloe Island, Midnight Selects, and Goodnight Aloe Island, all of which sold out in minutes. And back in 2018 going on to 2019, when Vaporwave was making its way onto Wax, one of Vaporwave's most prolific labels in the game, My Pet Flamingo, contacted Aloe Island Posse voicing their interest in pressing a record serving as an anthology in celebration of Aloe Island's discography. Shortly after, Aloe Island agreed to the proposal and organised his personal favourites to be embedded into the LP Aloe Island Anthology, which was pressed on a blue vinyl limited to 300 copies and 3 individual colour cassettes, and of course, like most Vaporwave physicals, sold out rather quickly. So despite how discreet he was in networking with fans, labels and other musicians, Aloe Island's reputation was far from going unnoticed, and his following was only multiplying with more people ascertaining who this rather intriguing figure was. However, sometimes in life, the unexpected will occur at any given moment without any indication of why or how it came about. Such as when in 2019, Aloe Island Posse deleted all of his music on Bandcamp, leaving hundreds on multiple platforms wondering what happened. There was no statement that anyone could find that was addressed by Aloe Island himself on any of his social media as to why he removed his entire catalogue. But on the other hand, after a good conversation with him, I'm here to give you all the answer you've been waiting to hear and understand his side of the story. So to start off, Aloe Island was part of a private online group for Future Funk producers to network and plug what they had been crafting in their DAWs. He wasn't very active after putting the project on hiatus, but every now and then he would check his messages in the chat. He soon found out that one of the artists in the forum had received a message from a Japanese record label saying that they were notified about a song they held the rights to had been sampled by that said producer. Though he didn't receive any emails regarding copyright from certain labels himself, it left Aloe Island to feel apprehensive about potentially facing that same predicament. So to avoid any possible repercussions, he made the decision to delete all of his work from Bandcamp, unaware that his music was still being celebrated within the community. Fortunately, all of his records are available to stream and download through Sleepless Tapes and Business Casual, so if you guys want to listen to them, I've got the links in the description below. After all these years, Aloe and Posse's legacy and impact on Vaporwave is still circulating across the web. Just because we don't hear much from Aloe doesn't mean he hasn't been tempted by the possible revival of the sound and image that we all remember him for. In addition to this, we have seen him participate in various live streams, including the most recent Waves event hosted by Private Suite, so there is a chance we could be seeing some sort of comeback at some point. As a matter of fact, there is a little something I learned in my conversations with Aloe and Posse, and even though I can't address what it is specifically, all I can say at this point is that you'll have to play the waiting game for just a little while longer. But believe me, when it arrives, it will certainly be worth the wait. For me, it's almost impossible to articulate why I think Aloe and Posse is one of the greatest names to have ever represented Vaporwave for the nostalgic dynamics he encapsulates. As someone that only discovered future funk around spring in 2018, Aloe and Adventures was what initially cemented my love for the genre. There were plenty of producers that fascinated me, from Tanuki to Night Tempo, but with everything Aloe and Posse inoculated into his work was incomparably unique and somewhat cathartic to me. One of the greatest aspects about music is being given the ability to convey our minds into another world that almost seems perfect to get lost in, no matter how idiosyncratic or formulaic the structure could be. It's hard to listen to anything from this guy without imagining I'm going on an adventure through this utopian tropical resort in the 80s. That being said, it's one hell of a satiating feast for your mental appetite, and it's near impossible to turn away from anything that Aloe has ever created. Whether you've had his tunes spinning in your playlist for the last few years or are still getting to know this phenomenal entity you've just stumbled upon, Aloe and Posse's mark on the culture is permanently engraved no matter where you look on the web. He's frequently endorsed by countless people in the scene, and one of the first recommendations offered to those wanting to be more acquainted with future funk. Regardless as to how well you know his material, and no matter where he may be or what he chooses to do right now, Aloe and Posse will forever remain a pioneer that helped inaugurate a multitude of dynamic elements into what now plays an essential role in Vaporwave and future funk.